Hello everyone, welcome to the next session of SAP Security. In this session we will be discussing about how to secure productive system. So when you setting up an SAP system, the system administrator or the basis administrator needs to configure several important settings. First of all, does the system which we are going to set up allow any changes, or let's say what kind of changes. It is very important we should note that in the productive system we do not allow any changes. So the changes which we are talking about is the development system. In the development system, what kind of changes we allow, or meaning to say in which are all the other systems whether we allow the changes, on what client we allow the changes, and once we allow the changes, how does the transport works, whether the changes will be transported to a different system using transport route, or the changes will not be transported. And these kind of settings you can also use our AIS, audit information system. We can also use audit information system. If you follow the menu path, you can still come to this configuration. As you know, only in the development system generally all the changes are allowed. As an security consultant or as an auditor, that we need to make sure that only in development system the modification are allowed. In the other system the modification are not allowed. Meaning to say, only in the development system you are allowed to change the program, or as well as, for example, your configuration like IMG settings. Only in the development system you will allow to change. Then in the quality as well as in the productive system it will not be allowed to change. You also need to ensure how the transport is going to work, the transport route. We already seen how the transport route works. This is again depends on the entire SAP system. You may wonder why as a security consultant we need to see this topic. As a security consultant we also have responsibility to keep the system audit compliance as well as keep the system secure. So using the settings we can make sure that these clients are not allowed to do any modification. Look into our system. Okay, you can go to the transaction SE03. We can also use the minute path in the audit information system which we have seen in the presentation. Otherwise go to SE03. The transport organizer. Here in the transport organizer tool you can see many functionalities, and you can see administration. The administration, the first option is set the system change option. So if you select this option and select execute, now it will bring to a system change option where you can set each component or each namespace in the SAP system whether it is modifiable or not modifiable. The first setting is global setting. We can simply say not modifiable, then it will become not modifiable for all the components. This will be the setting which will be used in your productive system. So productive system always not modifiable, meaning to say no component should be modified in the productive system. It has to be modified in the development system and need to be transported. So in the development system, let's say global setting is modifiable, and the first column you can select each component of SAP. You can say whether it is modifiable or non modifiable. In the second space you can define the namespace or name range. Let's say these are all the namespace. We already know what is namespace means. This is the reserved space which is given for customer as well as SAP. So you can select the specific namespace or name range and say whether it is modifiable or not modifiable. Okay, so as I said, in the productive system we make all the components as not modifiable. Only in the development system it will be modifiable. However, in the development system, or if you have any standalone system like sandbox system to play around, then it can be also be modifiable, whether these changes will not make any much impact in our day-to-day operation. Let's go back to our presentation. The next setting which we are going to talk about is the client change option. So we need to see this in detail. If you see, you have couple of selection options. The first one is the client information. Let's say if you go to our system, the client modification, you already know the transaction code, that is SCC4. Select enter. You may see right now this system we have many clients. Okay, this is an IDA system. In your development system also you may have more than one client. So what we said, in the development system we will allow the modification to happen. That does not mean that all the client you need to allow modification. You may allow modification in one client. In a typical scenario, in a development client, you may have 3 different clients. One client you may be using it for development purpose, and the another client you may be using it for testing, and another client is for sandbox. Possibly, otherwise you may use it for one development, another one is for sandbox clients, and like this you may have more than one client in a development system as well. So we need to understand how does the client works, what is the setting of this client. To display a specific client, for example 800, we select the client and say display. So when you display, you have quite a lot of information in this screen, and first you can see the client information, that is the client ID and the name of the client. You can name each client what is the purpose, and the city of the client which is being used, and the last person who changed and when it was changed, and the logical system. We already seen what is the logical system which is used for ALE in our CUA, and the currency, the standard currency. You may think, okay, if you define a city name and currency, what happens if you use different currencies? No, it is not an issue here, because this city and this currency is only as a reference. Actually this does not reflect in your business data or financial data. Okay, this is for only just as a reference for the client specific information. It's a technical information, it's not functional information. Then we have something called client role. Here you have production, test, customizing, demo, training and education. Right now it says it's production. For example, if it is a development client, we will define this is a customizing. If it is a QS system, we will define this is a test. If it is a productive system, we'll say production system, or demo system, or training system, or just an SAP reference client. Let's say for example 111 should be SAP reference client. But here it says it's a demo system. Since it's an IDA system, this has been changed. So let's go to our client 800. Okay, this is the information. Then the next tab we have changes and transports for client specific objects. This setting specify how does the changes are made and how it is being transported. This is again client specific object. Okay, so we seen client specific object, cross client object. The cross client object is programs and table changes. What we call is a workbench changes that anyway affects all the clients. And we next column is cross client object changes. Then this specify the cross client object changes. The client copier and comparison tool. We seen client copy, and this specify whether this client can be overwritten or it can be copied from a different client or not in order to protect the system. Then we have cat and ecat. This cat and ecat is for automatic scripting. So whether this is allowed or not allowed. In production system, generally it will not be allowed. For example, if it is a sensitive production system, you can specify it's not allowed, so that the automatic scripting is not executed by any user. And we have also another two selection criteria. It's for lock due to client copy, you can lock it, and protection against SAP upgrade. Okay, we will see each of these steps, how we have to secure our system in our SAP landscape. The first option, that changes and transport for client specific object. If you select the first option, changes without automatic recording, this is generally used for sandbox, meaning to say changes without automatic recording. If you select this, then this specific client will allow the user to make any changes. Let's say we did a lot of changes, lot of customizing changes, then it will we created a TR for the change. So if this is selected, it will allow the user to change, whoever has the authorization, of course. However, it will not prompt the user to create a TR. I'll simply make the changes and save it. It will not prompt for a TR to be created for the change what you have done. That means that without automatic recording. So this is generally used for sandbox. Why it is in sandbox? Like sandbox, we, like a consultant, we like to do some changes and test whether it is going to work or not. So in that cases, we will not be able to create any TR. We will not be creating any TRs. We just wanted to make the changes and see whether the solution is working. So this is for sandbox generally, or you can also select this for an independent system. You have an independent sandbox system, then you can select it like that. The next one is automatic recording of changes. This is for development and configuration client. For example, in our 800 client 800, this was enabled. That is the reason whenever we do any customizing or workbench changes, the system will automatically prompt to record the changes in the form of transport request, so that any changes what you are doing, it is not lost. It will be automatically saved. That is the idea behind that. Then the third option is no changes allowed. This option will not allow any changes in the system. So this option is generally used for production and QA system. But in QA system, let's say we can allow some time for some emergency testing or any exceptional cases, but we should not allow any changes in the productive system at all. Now we coming to the point, as a security consultant, this is also responsibility of a security consultant. The reason is that you will be monitoring all the client specific changes. Let's say if you are doing some audit controls, then client settings also will be monitored by security consultant. Then you need to make sure there is no changes allowed in the productive system. Then the fourth option is changes without automatic recording, no transport allowed. This is for independent system. Okay, so this is same like changes without automatic record, the first one, but no transport allowed. It will not allow you to create a transport. Here it will not prompt you to create a TR. However, you can create a TR manually if it is necessary in this setting. In this setting, it will not allow you to create a TR at all. So this is for just an independent system that you do not want to change, you do not want to transport any of the changes to anywhere, then we can select this option. Okay, this is client specific. So these are all the four options. which is available for changes and transport for client specific object. Here, for example, here we can see a typical configuration or development client. In the development client, what we will be doing is we will say automatic recording of changes, so that all the changes which is created in the development client will reach to the productive system without being lost or without not being recorded. And the next option is cross client object changes. Here we will select changes to repository and cross client customizing allowed, so that the cross client customizing should be possible using this client. We have another options. Let's see in our system. Okay, this is the one which will be used for our development system. Then the next option is no changes to cross client customizing object. That means this particular client will not allow any cross client customizing object. And the third option is no changes of repository objects. That means using this particular client you cannot do this one. Then the fourth option is no changes to repository and cross client customizing object. Okay, then the protection of client copier and comparison tool. Here it will be selected as no restrictions, and cat, generally in development system we can allow cat scripting. So here we have another example for sandbox. For sandbox, as we discussed before, the changes without automating recording is allowed. The first setting will be the changes without automatic recording, because or the user who is going to use the sandbox client of course would like to do some changes in the sandbox to test some scenarios. And cross client object, no changes to repository and cross client customizing object. You may wonder why it is no changes for repository. The reason is, let's assume in our scenario as we discussed, we will have sandbox in the same system, same development system. So if you do any cross client changes in the sandbox client, then that is going to affect the actual development system. So it is not a good idea to allow the sandbox to have cross client changes. So cross client changes has to be done in the development system, which is an actual change. In some cases, let's assume that you wanted to test some cross client customizing object, then sandbox cannot be a client. Sandbox can be a system, a separate system. In many bigger SAP landscapes, you can see there will be sandbox system as well. You will also have a sandbox client, but there will be also a sandbox system. Why the sandbox system is there? Because of this reason. If you want to do any cross client customizing, then you can do it in the sandbox system instead of doing in the development system in sandbox client. Then this protection is no protection and it is allowed. So now let's discuss about the productive system. The productive system, it will be no changes allowed. Now let's get into our system and discuss about how to secure the productive system. So in the productive system, let's say the client role first, it should be production, and the first option should be no changes allowed. On the second one, cross client object, of course no changes to repository object. And the third one, protection of client copier and comparison tool, generally it is specified as no overwritten or no external availability. You know what is client copy? It says no overwriting, meaning when you see in our previous lessons, when you are doing a client copy, you will go to the target system and copy from the source system. So it will overwrite whatever it's already existing. So it is very risky in the productive system to keep no restriction. So we keep it as no overwriting. Generally it is kept as no overwriting and no external availability. No external availability means comparison tool. Comparison tool means in SAP there is a facility you can compare one SAP system client with another SAP system client. You can compare the objects. Basically this type of comparison is done when you are before go live, that you wanted to check the consistency of the system with your golden client, then you can use this kind of tools. So if nobody should use this kind of tools, then you can select the third option. Then the next one is for cat. As I said, the cat is generally not allowed in the productive system, but in the development system it will be still allowed. Okay, with this we are coming to the end of this session. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you in the next session. Bye bye.